the NFL, they've been really busy with a lot of hearings and a lot of investigations because we saw the Miami Dolphins earlier this week. They lost a first-round pick in 2023 and a third-round pick in 2024 due to violating the tampering policy with Tom Brady and Sean Payton. So owner Stephen Ross is now suspended through October 17th. He's also been fined $1.5 million. Roger Goodell in the findings said the investigators found that tampering violations of unprecedented scope and severity here. This is something that we've heard of tampering in many leagues, but in the NFL, we don't see it too often here. And after a 6-month investigation, it sounds like the Dolphins got hit with the hammer here.
No doubt. I mean, look, what I think you have to understand is Bruce Spiel, the minority owner who also got suspended, he's not allowed to attend league meetings till October, and he got fined $500,000 as well. You know, he and Tom are really close friends. So, you know, how do you separate that, right? Like, this is one of the biggest contentions I've always had in the league is in the NBA in the past. The NBA, if you were an agent in the NBA, you could not represent coaches and players. Right. And so if because there's such a conflict of interest, right? Yeah. There's such a kind of intermingling of agendas. And so when you're an owner of the Miami Dolphins and your best friend is Tom Brady, like when you send a text, is that tampering? By the law, it is. You're not supposed to even have any contact with them. So, you know, I can imagine that this trail of what they tried to accomplish was pretty easy for the NFL to deduce and obviously impose the fine. I think they made it very clear that I thought they separated the intent of we're trying to lose and they upheld Flores' attempt to try to win. I think that's ultimately what they cleared up. And I think this sets precedent for all these other teams that want to go down this, we're just going to tank it road. You know, some of these, as analytics grow within the league, well, we should just get a higher draft pick. I think it spells a disaster. I think that now that they find them, you know, what's going to happen in week 16 and week 17 of the season when these teams try to lose to get a higher draft pick? Is that the integrity of the game? I think Goodell should take a look at that based on this ruling.
Yeah, because, I mean, the ruling showed that Stephen Ross said all the things that Brian Flores said he said. Now, the caveat is that they ended up interpreting it to where Stephen Ross didn't really mean it in a serious context. I want to find in my notes here what exactly they said that Stephen Ross did, because I thought it was kind of laughable that this is how it was interpreted, but that's kind of not up to me and up to the NFL here. But it said one comment made by Stephen Ross to the head coach Brian Flores back in 2019 suggested that he'd pay him $100,000 to lose games. Comment was not intended or taken to be a serious offer, nor was the subject pursued in any respect by Mr. Ross or anyone else at the club. But also in the findings, it showed that Stephen Ross had talked to not only Brian Flores, but the general manager Chris Greer and other front office executives about prioritizing their 2020 draft position over the Wins team loss record. So it's just kind of like those things, even just being inferred by the owner, really opens up a can of worms.
It does, and it opens up week 16 and 17 of the season. If I were Goodell, I would come out and say this ruling applies to any team who wants to tank at the end of the year. Yeah. You know, team who wants to just start substituting players out. You know, if you want to tank, I mean, remember the Eagles in that last game, you know, they did it. And there was no cause of it. But that was, to me, what the Eagles did was just as egregious as what Ross was talking about. They actually did it. They intended to lose. Ross talked about losing. So, like, what are we going to do? To me, this gives Goodell some strength to go to the next league meeting and say, fellas, if you're not trying in week 16, 17, if you think you're going to get a higher draft pick based on no attempt, I'm going to look at that pretty closely, and it could cost you a lot of money.
Yeah, the Eagles did it on national television, the final game of the regular season, taking Jalen Hurts out of the game and putting in Nate Sudfeld when there was a division title on the line. And I'm sure the New York Giants organization was not too happy with what happened there, because if the Eagles had won that game, the Giants would have won the NFC East instead of the Washington football team back in 2020. But back to the tampering policy, they said it was on 3 separate occasions. Dolphins had impermissible communications with Tom Brady when he was the Patriots quarterback in 2019 and 2020. These communications began as early as August of 2019, all the way through Brady's final season in New England. Then they also communicated with Brady when he was the Bucs quarterback after the 2021 season. Discussions began no later than December 2021 and focused on Brady becoming a limited partner with the Dolphins and possibly serving as a football executive. And they also talked about Brady playing for the Miami Dolphins. And then the final one was impermissible communications with Saints head coach Sean Payton and his agent Don Yee, who was also Tom Brady's agent, like you mentioned there, in January of 2022. Discussions surrounded Payton becoming the next head coach of the Dolphins. Also, they did not seek consent from New Orleans to have those discussions with Sean Payton prior to him announcing his retirement. And then after Payton announced his retirement, then they went and asked for permission from the Saints, and the Saints said, get the hell out of here. We're not giving you any permission. So it's just a mess. And the fact that an owner was so involved in this, and this is what Roger Goodell said. He said, quote, the investigators found tampering violations of unprecedented scope and severity. I know of no prior instance of a team violating the prohibition on tampering with both a head coach and star player to the potential detriment of multiple other clubs over a period of several years. Similarly, I know of no prior instance in which ownership was so directly involved in the violations. And when you see the suspension for Ross and you see the fine, which he might be getting off light with the fine there of $1.5 million, but to me, it's just a mess out there in Miami.
Yeah, and I think it kind of shows us as fans that Ross is really involved with this team. Like, let's make no mistake about it. Like, Ross isn't this owner that's going up to the Hamptons and hanging out and sipping cocktails and, no, call me when the game starts. You could see he's intimately involved. You know, you wonder why Tua's got a tremendous campaign by everybody. You wonder why Tyreek Hill keeps promoting him. You think why you see videos every time pop around on Tua throwing the ball? I mean, because you could see he's involved. He's involved in this. He wants to make sure he's getting his message out because he was involved in the picking of Tua. Yeah. There's no denying that. So I think this is just kind of like, here's the story. But really, what's the bigger story when you look at it? And I think the bigger story when you look at it is how much Ross really is involved and how Chris Greer is his instrument to be involved.
Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. And for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.